there was a glitch in my system, something that made me realize my life is like, it's there's so much more. And I realized that if I kept ignoring it and brushing it under the carpet, this was going to come back to haunt me, and I had to do something. One of the first experiences that I cherished a lot was climbing through Zojula. It was one of the most toughest passes. But back then, they say ignorance is bliss. And I didn't really think much about it, and I went out and did it. But in hindsight, it was one of the toughest passes that I've done, because I think that day particularly was very, very, it was very dicey, because there were a lot of landslides, and I like a fool walked across one with my bike on my shoulder, and that was like the riskiest thing. Cycling through the village, they'd stop me and they'd start talking to me and stuff like that. And they would come, they'll be like, come have chai, I'd sit, have chai. Then they're like, let's go, I'll show you my field. We'd go to the field. And on the way back, we'd stop at the school, I'd talk to the kids, and they'll say, it's lunchtime, we should have lunch. And then I would have lunch, and then by the time it's on the charpai, you fall asleep,
Wow.
Yeah, you wake up in the evening and they're like, just stay. And then, yeah, so again, my trip got... Yeah, and I came on the other side, and again, people are like, where did this guy come from? Because there were a lot of people who were on the other side who were waiting.
Yeah.
And I came, and then they were taking photos of me and stuff like that. It was like, okay.
I am Baiki Venki, and this is the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, time management, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. If you have any suggestions for guests on the show, leave a comment on the YouTube channel or join the Working Athlete community on Facebook to leave us a message. I'll put the links for that in the show notes. Today's guest is an explorer at heart, an explorer who started out searching for some answers in the depths of his own soul. In the process of discovering himself, he ended up quite literally scaling the Himalayan heights. He completed BE and MTech degrees from MIT Manipal and started working as an assistant professor there. But the answers he was looking for could not be found in any of the books he read. He ended up writing his own book, The Uncharted, My Journey into the Himalayas, with the learnings from his Himalayan journeys. He is always looking for newer adventures to undertake and newer answers to uncover. He shares his love for outdoors and adventure with his students and anyone who is interested to find their own answers to their questions. His name is Ganesh Nayak. Welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast, Ganesh. It's such a pleasure having you on the show.
Hi, Venki. I'm thrilled to be here. I can't believe that I'm here.
Good. So let us start by introducing your book, The Uncharted, My Journey into the Himalayas, right? I had the privilege of reading it before most in the world. Because I had the privilege of writing the foreword for the book, but it is impossible to capture all the stories, that and the essence of the book in the time that we have. But we will try to capture some of the stories in the podcast. But I would encourage any of the listeners to find the book. I will put the link in the description of the show notes. and you can go and find that. Where can they find Ganesh? They can order on.
I think Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon.in. So if they look for Uncharted by Ganesh Nayak, they should be able to get a copy.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going through the Amazon the book listings on the Amazon, and I saw 5 ratings all over. So yeah, it's what it deserves. It's really captures a lot of interesting stories that you had. So I would encourage all the listeners to go get a copy and read it. With that, let us start with the podcast. Now, the first time I met you was at Crankmeister, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were interning as a mechanic there, and
Yeah.
when we started chatting, I was surprised to hear that you were an MTech graduate from MIT Manipal, and you were working. I was like puzzled and was asking what are you doing working as a mechanic, and then I learned that you were in fact preparing yourself to be able to repair any issues that you might have with your bike, right? So
Yes. Yes.
yeah. So let us start with how did you get into cycling? What made you pick up a bike?
All right. So I was a long term smoker. So I've had I was addicted to smoking for since 2002, and I've been trying to kick the habit since 2010. And everything I tried, it became impossible. I tried so many times, I failed, and finally I decided, or at least I did a lot of reading, and it told me that I needed to make really good and big lifestyle changes. I basically needed to respect my body, and I realized that at some point I was fighting a battle. There was always a battle inside. There was some conflict, and I realized that I wasn't mentally strong enough to take on uh, this nicotine addiction. It's so many people are addicted to it. It becomes very difficult, and I realized I was mentally not prepared or strong enough to take on. That's, I think, because I wasn't physically strong as well. I was leading a largely sedentary lifestyle. Hadn't exercised in over a decade. I was very weak, and I realized that if I needed to take on this, then I needed to become strong. And I started making those lifestyle changes. And this was, in fact, in a couple of days, I'm going to celebrate 8 years of being smoke-free, 23rd December.
Wow.
So 23rd December 2012 is when I quit my cigarette smoking.
Okay.
And I picked a bicycle, and I don't know why I picked a bicycle. I knew that I couldn't run because I had a previous leg injury. So I decided, okay, let me bike. And that's how I got on a bicycle.
Okay.
And I haven't looked back since.
Yeah. So let's go back a little bit. So you said you have been smoking from 2002. How old were you at that time?
I think I was just around 19, 20.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. So you picked up the habit quite early. So what made you pick that up? Like, is it you talk about that a little bit in the book, but let's touch upon that. Peer pressure is what you attribute that to, right?
Yeah, so I would put it down as peer pressure, but also there is that thing inside of you that you want to explore new things, you want to have, and this misdirected basically. You have all this energy and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in Kodaikanal, and it was raining really heavily. I remember it was very cold, and I was with a bunch of friends who had gone on a vacation because my friend had membership to some cottages, and he had arranged for us to stay there. And then we went there, and then and I was just in that place, and there were people smoking around me, and I decided, okay, cool, why don't I try it out as well? I smoked a cigarette, and then then I never thought that I would continue smoking. It was supposed to be that one-time thing, but it just went out of control. Very slowly, but it did go out of control, and then I was soon addicted to cigarettes.
So finally, in 2012, you decided to replace one habit with another, and and that's how you picked up a bike. So let's talk a little bit about those initial years in cycling. What bike did you pick up, and how? What sort of riding did you do?
I was in really bad shape, and I didn't really have much money. My goals were very simple. I just wanted to get fit again. So I bought, you should understand that I was working in a startup. I wasn't getting paid very much. I had very little money. And with whatever little money I had, I bought a really cheap bicycle. My first bicycle was a Hercules Blazer IC. It was a really bad bicycle. It was really bad. But I didn't know anything about bikes back then, you should know. So I was cycling up probably since high school. I hadn't been on a bicycle. So I just bought it because he said, just take this. And I was like, okay, cool. And I just took it. And I started riding it. I was doing very small rides. I remember I couldn't even ride like a kilometer. I was running out of breath. My legs were screaming because I was in such bad shape. But slowly, I started breathing better. I started sleeping better because insomnia was one of the biggest issues, withdrawal symptoms that I was going through. I could fall asleep, but I would wake up in the middle of the night, and then I would just roll around. And I was still working, and I was working in a startup, so it was very demanding, and I needed to be alert. I needed to be able to focus. So I know that cycling helped me deal with these issues. It made me sleep better. I was breathing better. I got my appetite back. I was able to start smelling things. I felt really good. And I continued riding. And it evolved from just rides around my town to going around and exploring the countryside. I knew some roads, so I was taking those roads and I was going around. And you should know that Manipal is actually perched on top of a hill. So getting out of town means that eventually you'll have to push your way up. So I started giving myself these little challenges that, okay, I'm going to climb Manipal from this side, I'm going to climb Manipal from that side. And I was all doing it on a single speed, really bad bicycle. So even though I had a very bad bicycle, I felt that the very fact that it was so ungainly made me become stronger because I had to put so much more energy and effort into climbing these hills. And I immediately started, you get these endorphin kick and, you feel so alive. And after having spent close to a decade just living a very unhealthy, sedentary lifestyle, just being outdoors and doing things like this, just gave me a new lease on life. I was able to do so much. I really enjoyed that experience. And I started pushing myself further and further. But unfortunately, my bicycle couldn't keep up. It started breaking down. And that's when I thought that, if I needed to go further, I needed to be able to fix my own bicycle. And I remember I went back to the guy who sold me the bicycle and I told him I want to come and I want to learn to fix the bike and stuff like that. And he started laughing at me because I've been going to that store. He knows who we are because that store is well established in our locality. He was like, you're an engineer, what do you mean you want to come work as a mechanic? And I was like, yeah. And I think I was very persistent And he eventually agreed to it. And I think he thought that I'm just going to come there and just goof around and then go off. But I took it very seriously. And I actually sat down. I started working with the mechanics. I took the wheel off. I took the hubs apart. And I started to appreciate the bicycle for what it is and how simple it is. You don't really need to be like a rocket scientist to be able to fix it. You're able to do things by yourself and at least take care of it with very simple tools. So I learned how to fix, put a new wheel on, put a new tire on, fix a patch and stuff like that, put a new tube. But it was very empowering. And it gave me a lot of confidence because I suddenly knew what I was doing with my bicycle. I understood a little bit of bike fitting and stuff like that. And all this time, I started saving money as well. And that's when I came to Bangalore and I got my surly. So that was, I think, 6 months. I was very funny because I walked into Crankmeister and I'd already contacted Arvind Ganesh. And I'd been having this whole email thing with him and he set it up with Crankmeister. And I think it was Pawan who was there, and Pawan asked me, "So what bicycle were you riding before this?" And I told him I was riding like a Hercules. And I'd come to pick like a surly up, and he must have thought, "Who's this nutcase who walked in here?" But I knew I was very. By the time I wanted to go out and ride really long distances. Not become a racer as such, but you should understand that Manipal has no racing culture. Actually, in fact, back then there were no cyclists at all.
Right.
I was one of the first ones to probably do recreation cycling. There are people who are on bikes, mostly using it to commute or deliver groceries and milkmen and stuff like that.
Right.
But more like young people with disposable incomes. I think I was one of the first ones to do it. And so there wasn't any culture as such. And all I wanted to do was go around and explore my areas and see how far I can ride my bike. And that's what I wanted to get caught into. So I did my research and I found that the Surly Long Haul Trucker was like the best touring bicycle that I could buy. And I was lucky enough to find someone who's actually selling it in Bangalore. I couldn't believe my eyes that someone was actually selling it. And then I started exchanging emails with Arvind Ganesh, and eventually I landed up in Crankmeister and ended up buying a Surly Long Haul Trucker.
Nice. So this was in, when was this?
This was in August of 2013 that I got my Surly. Yeah.
Nice. And then you started going longer distances, is it?
Yeah, I immediately started going longer distances. Okay. So the first thing that I did was go and climb this hill called Agumbe, which is around 60 kilometers away. And that was a good experience because I went from struggling to climb a flight of stairs because I've been a smoker and stuff. And suddenly I was cycling 55 kilometers and then doing this big climb, like a 10-kilometer climb. Back then it felt really big, and sometimes now when I'm out of shape it still feels big, but it was awesome going up and climbing, and it's 14 hairpin bends and then you go and you stand up. I think that was like one of the changing points for me. It made me believe that I can, if I set my mind on something, I can go out and achieve it.
Right.
And I was on a high.
Yeah. So on the top of Agumbe, it is being there is literally being on a high, I guess. But I remember one thing from the book. Your mom told, "Why did you could just take the bus, right?"
Yeah. She's like. I remember this very well because I hadn't told her that about the bicycle. I told her it cost some 25,000 rupees, and she said, okay. But then she found I had taken I was very. I'd taken a Xerox of the check that I'd given Happy Earth, and my mom found it.
Okay.
You know how moms are; they just go through all your stuff. She ended up finding my check, and then she lost it. She's like, "What is this? What is happening?" And then I told her I want to go and ride to Abunde. And then she's like, "You've actually gone mad. If you want to go climb Abunde, you can just take a bus and go. What is this about? Going to Bangalore, spending so much money on a bicycle, and now you actually propose to go and ride all the way there." Um, but I think this is a common thing that most people go through.
Right.
That uh, people think your dreams are like you have to be a mad person to do things like this.
Yes.
So I don't blame her. In fact, she's now one of my biggest fans because after that, when I told her I was going to the Himalayas, she bought me my air tickets. When I told her I was going to Iceland, she bought me my air tickets. So it was really nice because when I transformed myself, everything around me transformed as well. People's perceptions, ideas about me and ideas about the world, everything changed. It was a very transformative experience, and it's not only for myself, it was for everyone around me as well.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Let's talk a little bit about that transformational experience. So what made you you smoked for 10 years and were going about it, but what made you think of giving it up, right? What made you go through that struggle? Of course, this is a struggle, right? Kicking a habit like
Yeah,
smoking is incredibly hard. What made you
yeah.
push those boundaries and try to unchain yourself from those from that uh, big habit?
So I started seeing people around me, and there were a few people who had made a working, and it wasn't working for me as well. Smoking wasn't working for me. It was just it was making me sick all the time. I had no energy. I had tooth loss. I was just 30, and I felt like an old man. Obviously, it was not working for me.
Right.
And I realized that there might be a day that it will be too late. You know. And I knew that it was injurious to my health. I didn't need the warning on the packet of the cigarette to tell me that. I could feel it every morning.
Yeah.
Depended on it to just go use the bathroom at times. It had come down to that. It felt really bad. My self-esteem was down. My confidence was down. I felt trapped, uh, and I just wanted to fight back and get rid of this because it felt like my life had become unlivable. Wherever I went, my cigarettes were there. It became impossible. It's
Right.
you know what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
It's just there everywhere.
Yeah.
You have no peace. It's there when you get up in the morning. It's there when you feel really good. It's there when you had a fight. It's there. It's there all the time. You smell, your clothes stink, your breath stinks, and oh my god, it's the holes in your t-shirt. You know what I'm talking, right? Yeah,
So
it's really bad.
yeah. So
Yeah.
one tooth fall and feeling like an old man in your 20s is not something that is that anyone would like, right? So probably that is what pushed you. Well, what are the things that maybe a few tips that you can give to someone who is looking for kicking the habit, like kicking an addiction like cigarette smoking?
So I remember, Becky, I tried to stop quitting since 2010, and it took me 2 years. Multiple times I failed. So what is it that worked in 2012? I've thought about this, and the only thing I can tell is education. I educated myself about my habit. I read extensively on nicotine addiction and what happens inside your body, and what happens when you quit, and what are the changes that is going on in your body. Understanding what are your trigger points, being ready, having a strategy in place for any downfall. You need to cover all your bases. You need to be really prepared for this, and And I think that's one of the things that I would definitely recommend people to do, is to go and educate themselves. One of the sites that worked really, really well for me, and I still go and read very occasionally now, but I still make it a point to go read sometimes, is yquit.com. It is a fantastic website. It's got a host of videos, and in fact, if you're wanting to quit, they have a whole plan for you lined up. They have everything, and it's completely free. So you don't have to pay anything. There is no membership. There is nothing like that. You can access the whole website. It's completely free, and I think that helped me a lot. They also have a forum on there, so you can connect with other people who are going through the same process as you are, and you can form like a support structure. And they have this, and it's incredible because these people have been doing this for they established it in 1990s, and they've been running that for so long. So it's very extensive. It's massive library and so many articles and videos. I'll tell you, I'm just one cigarette away from becoming an addict again. So there are times that even now, 8 years later, I get urges once in a while, but it's so much more easier to handle.
Yeah. Yquit.com, is it?
It's called www.yquit.com.
WHYQUIT.com. Yquit.com.
Yes, yquit.com.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a fantastic website. Whoever approaches me on quitting cigarettes, I tell them just go to that website and start reading, looking at the videos. You'll understand what is happening. You'll understand why you're addicted, and you'll also understand. And they'll give you tips, and they'll walk you through the whole quit process.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I think if it wasn't for that website and me finding it, it would have been a very different ballgame. It would have been very different, I think. So education. I think education works.
Right.
And as a smoker, your best chance for you to succeed is to educate yourself.
And looking at all the possibilities, the withdrawal symptoms and all that, and being ready to tackle them. Being aware of all that and being ready to tackle them. And all the internal dialogues of the excuses, just this one, and all that goes on with every addiction. You got to be careful about, because you are just, as you said, just one puff away from being an addict again. Just one puff, and I know that I'm going to be in that again. So it's just not worth it. Right. Yeah. Great. So, you kicked that habit, you picked up a bike and you started riding, and you got a surly long haul trucker, and you started climbing all the hills around Manipal. Now from Manipal to the leap to Himalayas, how did that Himalayas thing happen? What drew you to Himalayas? It's the biggest mountains in the world, and they're right here. I don't need to take a flight. I don't need to do any of that. It's right there. And I was in the Western Ghats, so I was cycling around the Western Ghats, and the only thing bigger than the Western Ghats in India are the Himalayas. So it was an obvious step. Okay. The next step was the Himalayas. So that's where I headed. Obviously, thinking about it, like when I climbed Agumbe in August, it still took me one more year. I got my Surly in August of 2013. It's only in August of 2014 that I was able to go out and start cycling the Himalayas. So it took a lot of time. You should understand this was 6 years ago, 7 years ago. There wasn't as much infrastructure or as many bicyclists out there as you find nowadays. Nowadays, there's so many people. In Manipal itself, if I go out in the morning, I find so many people on their bikes and riding around. Back then, there was nobody, so I had to figure everything out by myself. Right. So it took a lot of time. It took a lot of patience, a lot of trial and error, understanding, a lot of failures. It wasn't simple. It was pretty challenging. Let's talk a little bit about that preparation. What sort of preparation went into the the time leading up to Himalayas? What sort of planning, what sort of preparation in terms of training went through that?
There were several aspects to it. There was the whole physical training. I was still working like a full-time job. It was pretty demanding. I told you I was working at a startup. I would go to office, and I I had to work a whole day, and sometimes that day is not set. It's not like, okay, 5 o'clock you're just home. Sometimes the day went up to 6. Sometimes it went up to 8. Sometimes it went up to 9. So for me, taking care of my training became one of the most important things. So what I would do is I would wake up even before my boss did. So I would get up at 4 a.m. I knew that at that point in time he's not going to call me or send me an email. So I would get up at 4. I would be out of the door at 4:30, and I would cycle for 2 hours, and then I would do yoga after that. I would do yoga after that. So even before my day started, like the office day started, I would have done with my training was over. So I knew that that was taken care of. And then I would go work. And if my day ended up early, then in the evenings I would still continue training, but really light. I would just go out for a walk, or if I felt like it, I would do some body weight training. I didn't ever step into a gym the whole time I was training for the Himalayas. So that made, there was a lot of discipline as well that went into it, in the sense that I had to see that I went to bed every night at 9 o'clock, because I had to be up at 4 in the morning.
Right.
So there was a lot of I had to prioritize things. I no to a social life for a whole year. I just said no. There is a much bigger thing that I want to go out and achieve. So I said no to movies. I said no to friends, no to parties. I basically that thing just went out the window at the very beginning. So I had to be very disciplined in my choices. I had to understand what my priorities were, and I had to set it, and I had to stick by it. Because if I wanted to make this a success, I had to spend so much time, and I realized the importance of training. So I think, along with my whole mental, physical conditioning, my mental conditioning also was taken care of, because I had to be so disciplined in this endeavor.
Right.
Also, there was the money aspect of it. I knew that nobody was going to sponsor me.
Right.
And I wasn't looking for a sponsorship.
Yeah.
This was something that I was doing for myself. So even there, I had to be very careful. For a year, I didn't buy anything.
Right.
Like no luxury items, no new clothes. I was just wearing the same stuff. But I did buy stuff. But every purchase of mine was dedicated towards the Himalayan thing. If it wasn't going towards the Himalayan fund, or in buying gear, it was into my savings, so that I had the money for me to go to the Himalayas and do it.
Okay.
So for a year, that's the Himalayas were the only thing that I was thinking about. Nothing else. Everything was secondary in my life.
Right.
So luckily by then, I had worked for around 6 years at my work, so I didn't really have to spend a lot of energy there. Things were running by itself. It was a little difficult saying no to friends in the beginning, but I think after that they got busy with their own lives.
Right.
And I think my parents were also convinced, because they saw that I was staying with my parents, so they saw that, okay, this guy is getting up at 4 every morning. He's going and cycling so much, and they could see that change. They could see that they could see that energy and feel that intensity of having that of wanting to go out and do this really bad. So.
So which parent would be not happy when their kids are doing something productive, right? Like going out, waking up at 4, going out and exercising for a couple of hours, and taking care of their health and being very disciplined. Obviously, parents would be super proud of such a kid. Now, so all that preparation in terms of physical preparation, mental preparation, and then economic preparation, you were getting prepared. Now, what what kind of timelines did you put yourself? Going to Himalayas means that you have to move away from the work that you are doing, right? So what were you?
So
What were the timelines there? Yeah.
So I was looking at I knew that if I wanted to go cycle the Himalayas, I gave myself the target of cycling from Srinagar to Bhutan,
Okay.
and I knew that I couldn't do it. I have like a window in a year that I can actually go out and do it
Right.
before winter sets in and just after the monsoon. So
Right.
I knew that if I wanted to go out and do it, I had to do it from July onwards,
Mm-hmm.
and I had probably time till December to do it.
Okay.
So I immediately knew that it is not possible for me to get that kind of leave from work. So
Right.
I knew that I had to put in my papers. So that was something that I was already ready for. I told myself that this is something that I would have to do. And this felt much bigger than the job that I had.
Okay.
And it's not that I hated my job or anything. Please don't misunderstand. I really liked the job that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, I really liked it. And in fact, I think it's one of the things that I learned during my time in a startup was project management. I was managing projects, and it was one of the most important things that helped me execute something on this scale.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I was talking, there were so many logistical issues, training, and financial matters. So things have to be taken care of. And I was just one person. There was nobody helping me, telling me, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. I had to work on the whole thing myself.
Right.
So there was also time management that went into it. And I think working in a startup gave me that skill set to be able to go out and execute a project of this level.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to do something more. One of the things that I kept thinking was my life is just going by, it's just slipping through my fingers. All I've been doing for the last 6 or 7 years is just sit in front of a computer in a cubicle and just working. And it didn't feel exciting enough. I knew there was so much more to life than just this, and I wanted to go out and experience that. And because I think I don't know, I wasn't happy in my life.
Okay.
I mean, it felt like what is this? Is this the life that I dreamed about for myself? And the answer was no. And I realized if I keep again, this is one of the things that I learned during my time in the startup was that if you ignore a problem, it's going to come back and haunt you, and
Okay.
it's going to be so much more bigger down the time.
Right.
And I'm sure you understand that as well. You have like a bug at the beginning and you ignore it. That bug is going to be like a big ass monster
Right.
later on. And I understood that this was what was happening. There was a glitch in my system, something that made me realize my life is like it's there's so much more. And I realized that if I kept ignoring it and brushing it under the carpet, this was going to come back to haunt me, and I had to do something now. And it was crazy. It was like a very organic thing. You should understand that when I quit smoking and got on a bike, I never wanted to go and cycle the Himalayas.
Yeah.
It was something that snowballed into it, and I just flew with it. And I'm so happy that I went out and did it.
Right.
Not a day goes by that I regret my decision.
Yeah. So that is something that I am trying to understand. Right. You mentioned that it is very organic, and I want to kind of understand what is it that what is that tipping point where you said Agumbe happened quite early in the cycling once you got the Surly. But then what made the Himalayas come into the mind? Did you do any shorter tours before? You mentioned Western Ghats. So is that something that you did prior to it that kind of drew you there?
Yeah. So I did Agumbe and stuff like that, and I kept exploring. I went towards Kollur, and towards Kudremukh. Kudremukh was fantastic. I really loved the experience that I had there. I remember this one evening I was just riding around Kudremukh and I met this old man and he said, you should go up. There's a village. You can go and stay there. And I went. It was such an amazing experience. It felt very adventurous in the sense that the road up was completely covered in mud, and I was cycling, and then I showed up at this village, and then they're like, who's this guy? Who is this guy who's come from nowhere on a bicycle?
Yeah.
And they just took me in, and it felt so nice, and that night I camped out. I had my tent, and I put it up, and then the whole sky was lit with stars. It felt, my God, I was like, wow, man. And these were the kind of experiences that I had, and I think also at this time I was also reading a lot online about other bicycle tourists, and there was this one particular story that I read about this female teacher who was riding in Mongolia, and she got caught because the winter set in, but she had to get out, and she didn't know what to do, and she had a map, and she saw that the river which she was right next to had frozen up, but it was leading her right back out. And she just got on the river and she cycled back.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. Yeah, I was like, wow, man, that was a fantastic story. But what I took away from it was she was just like a teacher. She was like an ordinary person.
Right.
And just getting on a bicycle and going somewhere, she became like an extraordinary person, Yeah. And I thought if someone like that, who's like a regular teacher, can become like so extraordinary, why not me?
Right.
It's not that I wanted to be extraordinary. It's the experience, it's the life that I wanted to have. I wanted to be able to do at least something that stood out and something for me to look back and think about. And this is what inspired me to go and reach out and try to have something like that in my whole life, because this life is like an open slate, right? You can go and do things like this. There's nothing saying that you have to lead a life like this. At 25, you have to buy a car. At 30, you have to have a flat, get married. 32, you have to have a couple of kids. 50, you retire. Yeah. I think that's just.
Yeah, now I think now it makes sense to me, because along with the existential questions as to is it all there is to life, as to spend 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 in front of the computer, along with these experiences of sleeping under the sky, looking at the stars in Kudremukh and stuff like that, and reading those stories. It all kind of comes together and becomes very organic, in the sense that you are naturally drawn to the biggest mountains there are in the region.
Yes.
Now it kind of makes sense for me. And you took the preparation like a typical project manager, and got everything in place. And that is when part of that preparation was you ending up at Crankmeister, interning as a mechanic, right?
Yes. I knew that I could fix a Hercules, but I was now on a Surly, so I had to upgrade my training, and I knew to Crankmeister were the guys.
Right.
And I've always had a very nice relationship with Crankmeister, with Pawan, with Nikhil, with Ajay, Riaz was there, and now you have the new guys, Vimal and Baba Crankmeister.
Yeah.
And they're all very nice guys. I really have a nice time with them whenever I go. They're very helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is good interning with them as well. I still have the photograph of all of us. We look so young. This is in 2014. I'll share it with you. I'll probably send it across.
Yeah. So, and how long did you spend there, learning, fixing the bikes and stuff?
So I think I spent 10 days.
Okay.
This was just before I flew out. Right. I think this was like I was going to fly out of Bangalore at the end of my internship. I was going to fly out to Sri Lanka.
Mhm.
So that was just 10 days that I was there.
Awesome. And how long did you spend in the Himalayas? Nearly 4 months.
I yes. So I started in August, and I didn't reach Bhutan. I reached Kathmandu in Nepal,
Mhm.
and I decided to turn back, and I cycled back all the way to Manipal in South India. So I cycled through the Gangetic Plains and then reached the Konkan coast and then cycled down. So, yeah, I spent a total of I think 8 months cycling around India. Yeah.
Wow, wow. So you flew to Delhi, and from where did you start
Yes.
riding?
So I started cycling in Srinagar. So I
Okay,
flew Delhi, Srinagar, and I started in Srinagar. Yeah.
okay.
It's so funny. I
And
showed up in Srinagar and at the airport, and there were like this family, and they were all women.
uh-huh.
And this woman comes up and says, "TVA here." And I'm like, yeah, TVA, TVA. It's actually my bike box.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and because I was so careful with it, then that's one thing that works as well. If you tell, like, I travel quite often with my bike. When I get come to, I never tell people that it's a bicycle. I tell people it's a TV. When it's a TV, people will really take care of
Yeah.
it. Okay. Whereas if you tell it's like a bicycle, they don't care.
Right. Yeah. So you started riding from Srinagar and spent about 4 months or so in the Himalayas before starting back to um, riding back to Manipal. What are the some of the experiences that you fondly look back from your time touring there in the Himalayas?
Uh, the Himalayas was fantastic. It blew my mind completely. I think one of the first experiences that I cherished a lot was climbing through Zojula. It was one of the most toughest passes. Uh, but back then they say ignorance is bliss, and I didn't really think much about it, and I went out and did it. But in hindsight, it was one of the toughest passes that I've done because I think that day particularly was very uh, it was very dicey because there were a lot of landslides, and I like a fool walked across one with my bike on my shoulder, and that was like the riskiest thing that I did. And
Wow.
uh, yeah, it was pretty dicey that day. But I had no options in the sense that I had to get across the pass, and you don't know when the road's going to open. And
Right.
I've been waiting around, and I was just getting cold, and I decided that, man, this time is just going, and these guys went on for a lunch break, and I decided, okay, cool. If I had to make a break for it right now, is the time. Otherwise, God knows they'll probably send me back. And I climbed so high already, and I mean, Zojila is like one big mud road with landslides happening, and it's so exposed. So I just decided to make a run for it. But those 50 meters were like one of the toughest 50 meters because I initially started with the bike on my shoulder, but I realized that it was too risky because if I slipped, we were gone. So I
Yeah.
decided to just walk my bicycle across.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I came on the other side, and again, people are like, "Where did this guy come from?" Because there were a lot of people who were on the other side who were waiting.
Yeah.
And I came, and then they were taking photos of me and stuff like that. It was like, okay. And they were like, "So is the road open?" And I'm like, "No, no," because it was still barricaded on both sides. The
Hmm.
only reason I could get across the barricades was because I had my bicycle. I could
Right.
maneuver through it.
Yeah.
So the barricades were basically big, like JCBs, which are just
Yeah.
across the road, so
Right.
you couldn't get across. So on the other side, there was traffic waiting, there were cars and motorcyclists and stuff like that. And they're like, "Is the road open? Is the road open? Can you go?" I'm like, "No, you can't go. Don't go."
Not unless if you are on a bike, then sadly.
Yeah, maybe then. Yeah, so I got across, and then um, yeah, and then just I went to Dras, and I'd read about Dras, and because the Kargil war was still fresh in my memory, and I saw Tiger Hill and all that. It felt like I was going through a very familiar landscape, things that I'd read about, and suddenly I'm seeing it. It felt really awesome.
Hmm.
Um, I went up into the Aryan Valley. I think the Aryan Valley is a little less explored. I left the Manali the Srinagar Leh highway. I went into the Aryan Valley. I stayed in a village, um, and I had such an amazing time. It felt like there were no tourists there. It was just me staying with the locals. I ended up staying there for a couple of days, and that was also a very nice experience.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of these experiences because I think there were not many tourists back then as well.
Right.
Very few tourists, but I think now it's a lot more commercial. There's a lot more traffic that goes there.
Yeah.
So it felt very nice. I really liked it. And I think one of the biggest experiences that I've had was when I met this person. His name is Son Singh, and again, it's so funny because I just ran into him at a chai shop, and at the chai shop, it was in this tiny town, a tiny village. It just has like a row of shops. And the only reason for me to stop was there because there's a phone there. And I was on the Manali-Leh highway. I was kind of cycling towards Manali. And I was just going to go and do this big pass called Paglangla. And I was sitting and I thought I'd call my parents up because I wouldn't get a phone line for the next 10 days. I was just going to talk to my parents and tell them that, I'm at here, I'm going to do the pass, and I'm probably not going to be able to talk to you for another 10 days until I reach Manali. And Son Singh was there. And Son Singh was there to tell his wife the same, I think, saying that, okay, cool, I'm coming. But he was on his horses and he was going down to Manali. And we got talking, he saw my bicycle, and he happened to be very entrepreneurial. And he was like, why don't you come with me, and I'll take you, we'll go inside, I'm like, where inside? He's like, we'll take the inside road, you're here for an adventure, what is there on the Manali-Leh highway? Everyone goes on the Manali-Leh highway. I'll take you inside. And he had me sold within like 2 minutes. I'm like, all right. And I called back my parents and I'm like, hey, listen, I don't think I'm doing the Manali-Leh highway. I just met this person and we're going to go into the desert. I don't know what my parents were thinking, sitting down here, and I'm like, okay, and I went off with this guy into the shoot. It was phenomenal. That trip was, and that was, again, it was not planned, right?
Yeah.
You never sit in Manipal and think about, oh, I'm going to meet this person.
Yeah.
And we're going to go off on this mad trip.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that was my reward. I think that was the universe rewarding me for all the hard work that I put in. Right. Quitting smoking, overcoming so many challenges, and the universe just gave me these 10, 12 days, mad diet days. Just when I think about it, it's like if I'd probably shown up like 5 minutes late, or if Son Singh came 5 minutes late, our paths would have never crossed, and this grand adventure would have never happened because that trip was, oh my God, it was it was super tough. It was super tough because every day you had to push your bike up a pass. But there are no roads, so you can't cycle up. You have to basically push your bike up. And oh my God, it was harrowing at times because you slip and you fall, you're dead. And so Son Singh would just take off because he's on foot. He has got no bike to push up, and he's on his horses are there. His horses are running. He's also just going. And I'm in the back, just pushing, struggling with my bike, and oh my God. It was so beautiful because we didn't see another person for so long. I had some crazy experiences. We got chased by Bhutia dogs, which were when we came upon this herders camp, and we had to push the bikes up all these passes. I saw a snow leopard, which was again a fantastic experience. Wow, man, it felt so magical.
Yeah, I remember reading about these experiences, the dogs chasing, and you trying to you lost track of Son Singh, and you felt like you were in the lost in the middle of nowhere, no one to guide you, and it was amazing to read those experiences, and it was like being there with you. I would encourage all the listeners to check out the book. It's really worth reading. Yeah,
that particular chapter, in fact, my time with Son Singh is like 5 chapters in the book because so much happened. There's this. It's just like a book by itself, But yeah, that was a really good experiences in the Himalayas. Even the back roads of Uttarakhand. Once I came out of the mountains, I came into the foothills. That was also a very good experience. Absolutely no one. Very challenging in the sense that you had 30-kilometer ascents every day, but it's through pine forests and stuff. Very picturesque, very beautiful. And the descents, and then you climb up, then you down, and every day is like. By the time I was very well acclimatized, I'd just come back from high altitude, so my body was feeling very good, and 30 kilometers didn't feel like a lot.
Yeah.
And I think I spent 10 days in the foothills cycling the back roads of Uttarakhand. Wow. That was also very beautiful. I think I would definitely recommend people who are thinking of bike touring to go into Uttarakhand and do these back roads, starting in the west and all the way up to the east. Beautiful roads. Very unspoiled, very nice people. I don't know how it is now, but back then in 2014, every night I would spend in a villager's house. It was such a nice experience. Also, Annapurna's in Nepal, where I went and cycled in November. That was super beautiful. I took a pass for like 1 week. I ended up spending, I think, close to 2.5 weeks in there.
Okay.
I just didn't want to leave because it was such a nice experience again. And back then it was very raw. I think in 2014 it was still raw. From what I hear now, they've made a road up, and I think the minute you build a road, you will spoil it.
Okay.
Back then it was still like a trail, and it was still very unexplored. And I met some really nice people there as well in the mountains.
Man, yeah. These are all amazing experiences. Experiences that you would remember and probably tell your grandkids as well, right? So
if I have grandkids, if not mine, then someone else's grandkids.
Yes.
As long as they're grandkids.
Yeah, as long as they're grandkids. And I can give the book to my grandkids and make them read.
Yes.
Yeah. So how was the experience down, getting out of Uttarakhand and then riding towards Manipal?
So I was actually getting out of Nepal and then riding towards Manipal, because Uttarakhand, I was still cycling into Nepal, and then I did a circuit there.
Okay.
So it's so funny because I was sitting in Kathmandu, and Kathmandu is like a lot of backpackers. I was in Thamel, that's like the backpacker district where you have a lot of these travelers and stuff like that. And I was sitting around, and I met a lot of interesting people, and they're talking, and they're like, "Hey, where are you going?" Because these guys were talking about going to the Everest base camp, and some people were going to Machu Picchu, and people were going back into the Annapurnas, and I told them, "Oh, I'm going to Bihar," and they're like, "What the fuck? What is this?" Sorry. What are you doing? And a lot of people told me that, especially the locals, don't go to Bihar. But I had no option, and I didn't want to go cycle back into Uttarakhand after having come there. And I decided, how bad is it going to be? I don't think it's going to be that bad. And it wasn't. I think one of the biggest things that I did was before I set out, I charted out my route, and I decided to stay away from all the big towns and the big cities. And I decided that the best thing to do is to stick to the villages, because I realized that during my travels, one of the things I've realized is, if you stick to the villages, the people are always going to be good, because people are more accountable in the villages. Because the minute you you create trouble, you're going to be marked. People will know who did it. Yeah. So people are more accountable. People are more responsible with their actions and their things. So I just stuck to the back roads, and it paid off. I had a phenomenal time in Bihar. I never got knifed. I never got robbed. People were super nice to me. I keep telling this, when I would go, I would stop. People would stop me, because who is this weirdo who is cycling through the village? They'd stop me and they'd start talking to me and stuff like that. And they would come, they'll be like, come have chai, I'd sit, have chai. Then they're like, let's go, I'll show you my field. We'd go to the field. And on the way back, we'd stop at the school, I'd talk to the kids, and they'll say, it's lunchtime, we should have lunch. And then I would have lunch, and then by the time it's on the charpa, you fall asleep,
Wow.
By the you wake up in the evening, and they're like, just stay. And then, so again, my trip got, and the beauty of this trip is it was so open-ended. I had no fixed plans. There was nothing waiting for me to get back. So I was able to take my own sweet time and do what I wanted to do. And so I managed to really have a very good time in Uttarakhand, in Bihar. But it was still very, when you compare it to South India, I think they're lacking in so many aspects. I think in South India, they're so well off. It was quite a culture shock being there. People are very poor. That doesn't mean that they're very rich with their hearts. They give very openly. But economically, in terms of infrastructure, they are very backward. And that opened my eyes to the fact that I think we here are so lucky to have so many things so easily accessible: primary healthcare, education, just good infrastructure, power, and I think at some level we take it for granted. Whereas if we probably travel through that area, you know how lucky we are with what we have.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So out of Haryana, how long did it take to get to Manipal?
So not Haryana, it's Bihar. So I came.
I am so sorry. I'm really so completely opposite to you. Are so bad with names and geography.
So one of the things that I learned out of my trip was geography. I'm now able to place states in my country. I'm like, okay, this is where it is. This is where Haryana is. This is where Bihar is. Yeah. So it's so funny because I think cycling does that to you. It just gives you this understanding of the area and the landscape that you're in. Because I think a large part of our life, especially, I think it just goes like that. It's like being in a car. You don't take in the sights. But I think when you're on a bicycle, things slow down. Time slows down. You're able to feel things. You're able to talk to people. And your life inadvertently becomes so much more richer. So I think it's one of the things that I've learned from bicycle touring is to take it slow. Just chill. To take it easy. Because I think when you take it like that, you see so much more of life and it becomes so much more richer. You enjoy the little details. So anyway, sorry, I just went off on a tangent.
No. Yeah.
So when I was cycling, so I went through Bihar and then I came to Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh was also really good. I really loved Madhya Pradesh when I met next. And then I came into Maharashtra, then Goa, and then eventually. So it took me like around 2.5 months.
Okay.
I had a lot of pit stops along the way. Like I spent I think around a week in this place called Mandu in Madhya Pradesh. Wow, it was such a nice place. It was I don't even have words for this because you have all these old ruins and they were not barricaded. There were absolutely no one around and you could do whatever you wanted. And the food was so good. The people were so nice and I would just cycle from one ruin to another, just walk around, and it was perched on top of a hill, and there were ravines, and it was so beautiful. I can't express in words how beautiful it was. I decided to stay there for one day. I ended up staying there for close to 8 to 10 days. I don't remember right now. And it was so funny because I reached there late in the evening. I didn't know where to go. I met this guy, and he said, "You come with me, I'll show you a nice place." He took me, and this guy was some chowkidar, and he took me to this government rest house. And this government rest house was on top of perched on top of a hill, on the hill, and it was overlooking a river, and it was so beautiful. My God. It was and I was so lucky to get that place. And I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a lot about Manipal. It
Mhm.
reminded me a lot of Manipal because Manipal has a similar landscape, and
Mhm.
Manipal has developed really rapidly over the last years. So much of our forests have been gone. So much of this laterite landscape, which is there, has just been destroyed.
Mhm.
But in Mandu, I think I was able to recapture that, along with the fact that there was so many of these Mughal architecture which was just lying around. And,
Right.
nobody, there was absolutely no tourists. Of
Yeah.
course, there were a couple of some French guys who were just as crazy as me and who were jumping off the cliff. They were paragliders.
Wow.
I had a lot of fun with those guys as well. So it was very nice. I met some nice people in Mandu as well.
Mhm. Great, great. So you came back to Manipal after what, 8 months, and then now what?
So this was in 2015.
Yeah.
So in 2015, once I came back, uh, I worked as a boatman for some time. I think not many people know this, but I worked as a boatman for like 2 months because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be out in nature again because you can imagine I've just spent 8 months on the road,
Yeah.
and you come back and suddenly being trying to get back into society is not possible. It's
Right.
you lose your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
So I decided that I wanted to probably just decompress a little bit
Hmm.
and figure out what I wanted to do next. And I got the opportunity to go and work as a farmhand in Sharavati Valley. And as a
Okay.
part of my job, I had to do some boating. I had to take people out on a coracle in the river,
Mhm.
and I did that for a couple of months. It was amazing again. It was because I was in the Western Ghats, in the heart of it, a lot of wildlife around, a lot of bird life as well. I was very secluded, so it gave me a lot of time to reflect on what I wanted to do. But I hadn't figured out anything until the very end, and then I got the opportunity to work with a few boys. So these boys um, came there, and I was able to facilitate an outdoor experience for them. So
Okay.
take them camping and teach them rowing and cooking, and then identifying birds and catching snakes, and it felt like I was giving back some of the things that I'd learned, and it felt very fulfilling. It felt very nice. Again, it turned out to be a very organic thing because at that point I left that place because it got really tough there. It
Hmm.
started raining and we were completely cut off, and it's another adventure for another time. I think we can talk about it. But
Okay.
anyway, I came back to Manipal because it became a little challenging staying there.
Hmm.
And when I came back to Manipal, I found that there was a place in MIT for me.
Okay.
Uh, Not for me, but there was an opening, and then I filled it up.
Okay.
Uh, and since then, I've been facilitating outdoor experiences for students here. Um, it's not in my job description,
Yeah.
but it's been one of the most fulfilling things in my life was to start an outdoor program for students here. It's been amazing. I've been very lucky because um, I've got a lot of support,
Hmm.
not only from my administrators, from students. They've lapped it up. They really liked what I've done,
Hmm.
and they've helped me make it so much more bigger. Um, Most of my friends have contributed to its growth. So yeah, so it's been amazing.
Yeah. So let's talk a
It's not
little. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's
It's
talk.
not just me. I wouldn't say that it's just me that's done it.
Mm.
It's been again. It's probably a lot of people that have come together and made it possible. I'm feeling very lucky that this I've got this opportunity to make this happen.
Okay. So what sort of activities, outdoor activities and stuff do they do?
So it's like I trained for the Himalayas. I realized that if I could just do that, the students, you can, any person will learn so much more.
Mm.
Apart from skills, they learn so much more about themselves, about
Right.
what are some of the things, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. It gives you an opportunity to work on them during the
Mm.
program. So I call it the Adventurer, and it's based around bicycle touring. So we do like 6 weeks, and Most of the students who come and work with us at the beginning are cycling like 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers around Manipal. Most of them are just commuting. And then, but we set a big goal at the end. We do like a 250-kilometer ride over 3 or 4 days, which includes a trek and things like that. And then we keep that in mind and we start training. And along the way, they learn a number of skills like first aid. They learn bicycle repair and maintenance. They learn stretching, active stretching and cool down and injury prevention. So there are a host of skills. They also do leadership modules. They learn outdoor leadership, risk management, time management. So one of the experiences that I got was I went and did an outdoor program in Alaska in 2017 at National Outdoor Leadership School. And I learned a lot of things from that, and that helped me fine-tune the program that I was doing, and I picked up a lot of things from there on how to facilitate these outdoor experiences. It's been amazing doing this, and I'm thinking of making it bigger, because right now we are going to offer it as an and has an official certificate program from the university. So it is growing, and I'm seeing how we can make it bigger. At least my long-term goal is to try and establish an outdoor school here in Manipal for students, because I think as teachers, our role should be much more than just giving them knowledge. We should be able to inspire, and we should be able to facilitate transformative experiences.
Right.
Otherwise, the students are smart. They don't need lectures anymore. They can just go on YouTube and figure things out.
Right.
They don't need you there. So how do you make yourself relevant? Is one of the questions that I've been asking myself. YouTube cannot facilitate an outdoor experience for you.
Yeah,
you need a person there, and I've been lucky enough that I've been able to fill that space and been able to make this experience possible for people. And my students have really liked it. They've told me that most of them come and they have a very different concept of themselves after the program. Suddenly, the world is a whole new place for them, and it's amazing. It's amazing because. Yeah.
So who are eligible to be part of that program?
Anybody. If you're a student of Manipal at Mahe, you have a bicycle, and provided that you're decently motivated enough. In the very beginning, I was the only person running it the first time.
Yeah.
Actually, the first 2 times. And I had to call people and say, "Hey, do you want to join the program?"
Right.
But now we get like a lot more entries. I think the last time we had 65 people, and we can't facilitate this for a lot. We can't do 65 people.
Right.
We can do 10 people.
Yeah.
So we have to pick people up, and we have to decide on who gets a chance. I wish I could say yes to all of them, but it's not possible to make that happen.
Okay. So how long are these programs?
So it's 6 weeks, and I do it twice a year. So once 2 semesters. We have 2 semesters in a year, so once each semester as well.
Okay. Excellent. I think it's a great chance that the students of MIT are getting, thanks to you and the other guys who are running it. So you mentioned doing an outdoor leadership program in Alaska. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I realized that I was still taking my students out before that, in 2015, 2016, and I saw this program. I wanted to learn to sea kayak, so that was one of the reasons that I wanted to go and do this program. It was not that I would learn how to run a better program, so that was not the intention at all. That was something that happened because I went there and I realized that, hey man, I can probably do a program like this as well. So I actually went to Alaska to learn sea kayaking.
Okay.
And I applied and I got a scholarship to go and attend that. I told them, okay, this is what I do with my students and this is what I've previously done. And I got a scholarship for it. I also got recommendations for it because I met a few outdoor educators in the Himalayas. So they were kind enough to write a recommendation for me.
Wow.
And based on that, I got a scholarship. And I spent a month in Alaska doing this outdoor leadership program. I didn't learn. I sea kayaked, but it was mostly in protected waters. So it wasn't really very technical. But what I did learn was the soft skill side of it, on leadership, on facilitating outdoor experiences for other people, because it was an outdoor educator course.
Right.
So those were the things that I took away from it. And when I came back in 2018, I started running a program similar to the lines. It's not something that is so extensive as the Alaska program, because that's all we did for 1 month. For one month, I spent time in the wilderness. And it's not possible for us, not possible for us, at least at this point in time, for us to do something like that. Right. So I started in a very small way. I decided we meet 4 times a week with these students. We do like 2 or 3 workshops. At the end of it, we go cycle to Agumbe. It was just 1 day ride that we do like 100 kilometers and we come back. Most of these students would have cycled 10 kilometers. So in a month, we take them from riding 10 to 100.
Right.
And that itself is very empowering. They're like, wow, we went and cycled to Agumbe. Yeah. Because most people know where Agumbe is in Manipal. They know because they can see it. It's right at the back. On a clear day, you can see Agumbe. It's really big. The mountains at the back, you can see it. Mountains are hills, but but they're big. And to go and cycle and come back is fantastic. And it's also a very good visual reminder, because every time you walk into college, you can see it and you can tell yourself that, hey, I cycle there. You know?
Yeah.
And so I can take on whatever comes my way today. So I wanted my students to have that experience.
Excellent. What are the couple of things that you learned in that program that you found useful here with the program that you were implementing in the college?
It gave me a very good structure.
Okay.
It gave me a very good structure on how to structure the whole program. What are some of the things that you need to cover? Like risk management was one of the biggest things that I learned from it, and how to assess risk, and also planning a trip and planning your day out is also another thing that I learned. And of course, leadership. I think that's very important. Dealing with people and understanding your priorities when you're out in the wilderness or when you're outdoors, and how to basically take care of yourself. So many things that you learn, and you don't need to move mountains. When you start, you can start very small. Like when I started, I just did it very small, but these small things add up and they become very big.
Yeah. So all these small steps become compound over a period of time and become huge. Like you started by huffing and puffing to cycle from one street to the other, and you ended up riding in the Himalayas for over a period of 8 months.
Yeah.
See all the amazing experiences you got, right? So you are through this program, you are laying those foundation stones for a lot of these students, and what do we know? Where they will end up, right?
Yes, for sure. That is something that I'm so very keen to see where these students land up in a few years. Most of them are doing really well. Are in very good jobs, have gone to universities abroad, are doing really well in whatever they've chosen, and I like to think that I've contributed a little to their success.
Definitely.
And apart from that, I think these guys keep me on my toes as well, because I need to train 10 times harder than these guys. They're half my age. I need to be so much more. I have to be careful about what I eat, how much I'm sleeping. So I need to train I need to be really strong to keep up with these guys. I need to be really fit. And these guys will show up, wouldn't have slept half the night, and they're so much more faster than me up the hill, and they eat all kinds of junk, and here I am still disciplined, and I'm still struggling, but I like it. I like it that these guys keep me on my toes and keep me disciplined.
Amazing. So, did you do after the Himalayas? Did you do any other tours? I remember.
Yeah, so I did.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So in 2016, I went back and I cycled the Himalayas. I hadn't done Manali-Leh highway because I met Stone Singh, so I missed the Manali-Leh highway, and because of bad weather, I had to cancel out Spiti Valley as well. Once the first time I was out in the mountains. So I went back in 2016 and I did Spiti Valley, I did Manali-Leh highway, and I cycled back to Srinagar, but I did it on the opposite way. The first time I'd done it from Srinagar to Leh, this time I did from Leh to Srinagar.
Okay.
And that was in 2016 that I did. In 2017, I cycled around Iceland with my friend Joe, who I had met in the Himalayas in 2016. He invited me to Switzerland, so I spent time with him in Switzerland, and then we flew to Iceland and we cycled around Iceland in 2017. Also in 2017, I went to Alaska. So I spent, I think, 3 months in the outdoors. Actually, 2.5 months in the outdoors. It was awesome. So it was in the subarctic, because Iceland is in subarctic, and then you have Alaska in the subarctic. It was awesome. I had such a nice time, and I did 3 different activities. I did cycling, I did kayaking, and then I did backpacking. So it was awesome.
Oh, nice. So let's talk a little bit about the Iceland trip. How did that go? Was it in the same time as the Alaskan Leadership Program, just before, or how was that?
Yeah, just before. It was just before that. So I spent 6 weeks in. Around 6 weeks. I think I spent like a week and a half in Switzerland with Joe, because that's where Joe is, in Lausanne. And then I spent cycling around Switzerland with Joe and just chilling, taking it easy. And after that, we flew to Iceland. And then in Iceland was phenomenal. I mean, wow. It was incredible, but it was also super tough. I was in really bad shape. I think I didn't take care of myself in 2017. I was in really bad shape, and Joe and Yannick, the 2 guys that I'd gone with, they're built like tanks, and I was struggling for that tour, I remember, and I definitely want to go back to Iceland and make like a big tour there. I'm thinking 2024, in 4 years, is when I'm thinking. Because I have other things that I want to do before that. So 2024, I was thinking, I did north to south through the highlands, but this time I want to do east to west through the highlands. I think it'll be so much more tougher, but I think even I'll be in good shape.
Okay. So what you mentioned, you want to do some other things before 2024. What are the things that you have in mind?
Oh, yeah, those are things that you don't want to discuss with a lot of people, not online at least.
Okay.
So I don't like to talk too much about the projects. I think that jinxes it.
That's fine.
I just.
Yeah, we can talk about. We can come back again on the podcast and talk about it once you have done it. Right?
Yeah. Yes, that's for another podcast. Yes,
let's do that.
Yes, definitely. So I also cycled Tajikistan in 2018. So I cycled Dushanbe to Osh. Basically, I cycled the Pamir Highway from Tajikistan to Kyrgyzstan. That was in 2018. I spent 5 weeks there. That was also amazing. I really had such an awesome time in Tajikistan.
Was it alone?
Yes, I went by myself. So it was a very different experience because I didn't know the language. The culture was very different, and uh, everything was different about that place. I
Okay.
couldn't read. I couldn't understand what people were saying. It was yeah. It was. But the people were fantastic. It was unbelievable. I think when you go and go on these cycle tours, it's just the people. The people make the experience.
Right.
You have some really good people that you meet. It can just change things for you. I met some really nice, very good people when I was in Tajikistan. Yeah.
Okay.
I never had a bad experience. Okay, probably one.
Okay. What was that?
Oh, it was actually something very small. I met, it was actually my fault. The thing is, I stayed at a homestay and they agreed on a price. And me, like a fool, the next morning, I opened my wallet in front of them and they were like, no, no, you have to pay us more. Because they suddenly saw that I had more money in my wallet.
Okay.
And yeah, that was like a very dumb move. I think I should have, I shouldn't have shown all the money that I had.
Okay. Yeah.
But it was such a nice experience there because I went with like a lot of money thinking that it's going to be super expensive, and I came back with more than I think around 60% of my money back. I
Okay.
just spent 40% on my budget
Okay.
because it was so cheap, and people were so good. Venky, you won't believe it. Um, I was in the middle of nowhere, and this person took me in, and he was running. It's called Chai Khana. Chai Khana means it's a place where you get chai and food.
Yeah.
It's like a rest stop.
Right.
Um, this guy could have fleeced me, and I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
He could have just overcharged me. He
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
He gave me a place to sleep. He gave me like food. He gave me dinner. He gave me breakfast, and as much tea as I wanted. And he charged me like some 150 rupees.
Wow.
I was completely blown away, man. It was so honest. Uh, yeah,
Nice. So that was in 2018. Did you do
that
something
was in
in 2019
2018.
as well?
No, I didn't do anything in 2019. I was just taking it easy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think some big things are coming, maybe 21, 22 and stuff. Because there are a couple of years gap. I can see you itching.
Yeah. 2020, actually, I was planning something with my students. We were going to go and cycle the Himalayas.
Okay.
But unfortunately, that didn't happen because of Corona.
Mm-hmm.
We had everything lined up. We wanted to go cycle in the Himalayas. But we planned something in 2021. Nothing as big as that. Something a little more smaller because most of these students are done with college now. They're more keen on moving on, and they don't have so much time to train because they're doing their internships. Some people have graduated,
Yeah.
but everybody wants to come back and do a ride.
Mm-hmm.
And and the funny thing is, I have 4 students who I'm going with, and they happen to be from the four versions of the program that I've run. So I've run the adventure 4 times. So I have a student from every program who's yes, let's do this, and I'm very keen. That'll be very nice to do this with my students. So
Nice.
we're planning something very short, just 15 days, but I think it'll be very nice to go out and do it.
Wow, 15 days. When are you planning that?
So I think it's going to be May, June
Okay.
is when we're planning to do it.
Nice.
Yeah. The last one we had planned was for 40 days.
Okay.
So though we've got it down, I think this is something where everyone is comfortable at.
Mm-hmm.
Given that, even I think I'm 40 days would have been a little too much for me as well. I think if I had to do it now that I think about it, I think 15 days is very ideal.
Okay.
It's not too strainful. It's easily manageable.
Mm-hmm. And still in the Himalayas?
Yeah, it's still in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
I think everybody's kicked about it. I mean, what next? What after the Western Ghats? It's the Himalayas. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, how do you manage to? How do you time this with your work? The doing the tours that are like weeks long.
I'm very lucky again because I made the choice of, actually I don't think I'm lucky, but I made the choice of being at a job which gives me that time off. So I have 6 weeks off in summer, and then I have 3 weeks off in December. So there is time which is off for me. Basically, I'm on vacation for those 6 weeks
Okay.
In the summer. So that's the time that I use to go out and make these tours happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. So, what are some of the uh, tips to working athletes to manage work and active outdoors lifestyle that you could think of?
I think you have to accept the fact that it's going to be challenging, that it's going to be a struggle, that you have to make tough choices. It's not easy waking yourself up every morning and making yourself get on a bike and do it. But I think that if you can get past that 5-10 minutes window at the very beginning, then it's just that you'll never regret going out and doing it.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I think the initial until that initial couple of minutes where you have to get over that resistance. Once you take that resistance out and step out, you won't. Once you step out and get on the bike, that's it. It is until you get out of the door. All that resistance.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. You're like, okay, I think today I should just take it easy. I shouldn't do anything. Let me just read my book, or let me just check my email. And I think it's very important. One of the things that I do especially is to get ready for the ride next day. So I keep my clothes ready. I keep my water bottle ready. I keep my lights charged. And I know the route that I'm doing. So that in the morning, there are no excuses. Everything is lined up, everything is in place. I also don't fumble around looking for things. So it's very easy for me to go from being in bed to getting on a bike. It's not that difficult. I also keep something ready. If I need to get something to eat, then I have that ready as well. So I plan the whole thing so that it's not difficult for me in the morning when I get up. It becomes very easy. So there are no doubts. There are none of these nagging questions telling you, "Hey, it's chill, take it easy." Everything is lined up. You just do tuck, and then you're out of the door. Awesome. So I think that's one of the things that works for me.
Yeah. So I think that planning the day before and making sure that you ease the resistance in the morning and make getting out very easy. And it happens in that case.
Right. I think also committing to having another person. You call up a friend and say, "Hey man, let's ride tomorrow." It becomes so difficult to call up at 5 and say, "Hey, I'm really sorry, man." That person will be cursing. He'll be like, "You woke me up and just cancel,"
Yeah.
So I think having that person and committing to that person is also very important.
Yeah.
Just makes you a little more,
That is also a great tip, because having being accountable for someone, having to say no is again difficult. That is so you're making the bad habit difficult and good habit easy. That is, you are taking the resistance out, but making saying no difficult by having someone. Excellent points both. Great. So great talking to you, Ganesh. Great tips and great experiences that you shared. And the thing, the activities, the outdoor programs that you are doing at Manipal and everything, I think is fantastic. That is going to add so much value to the students in their life, and be it the leadership that they are going to learn out of it, and the planning and everything, I think, is going to be very valuable for them. And thank you for sharing all the experiences with us. And to the listeners, this is just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to the kind of experiences he had in Himalayas, and all of them are in the book. I think you should check out the Uncharted, My Journey into the Himalayas by Ganesh Nayak. It is there available on Amazon. I will link it in the show notes. You should definitely give that a try. And thanks again, Ganesh. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Venki. Thank you so much.